One of the first things we did when we purchased our homestead was to purchase several fruit trees because we dreamed of having our own orchard. The property came with one old pear tree, and the previous owners had planted a few apple trees and an extra pear tree. We planted around 30 trees the first year. Currently, we have several varieties of apple, pear, peach, cherry, plum, persimmon, apricot, and fig. We also purchased a few oak trees to start creating a wind barrier, but we'll need to continue to add more trees and brush to help with that as time goes on. First year was rough for our orchard as it took a while to figure out what kind of irrigation setup to put in, and so for a while we were doing a lot of the watering by hand. The soil here is a mixture of clay, sand, and rock, and the poor trees were hit with an army of June bugs in May, and then another army of grasshoppers after that. We felt like we were in a constant reactive state, trying to mitigate the problems as they just kept popping up, and really just hoping that our trees are going to survive. This year, we feel slightly more prepared and started checking to see which trees did survive and which ones did not. We did lose a few trees, but not as many as we thought we might due to the stress that they were under last year. This year, we replaced those few trees we lost plus added around 10 extra. During this process, we dug up our fig trees because we thought those were dead, as some form of wildlife had partially dug them up, and the wood above the ground seemed dead when we scratched at the bark. However, after we dug them up, I noticed some tiny green knobs on the roots. This was most definitely a sign of life, so I scooped them up from the field, planted them in some pots. Then I brought them inside to sit under a grow light and watered them regularly. Now they look much happier, and the larger one has already been replanted outside. The smaller one is still growing indoors. The depth of above ground wood of fig trees is common in Kansas because it can often get below 15 degrees Fahrenheit, which kills the above ground structure. But the roots will grow back as long as they are protected. This is something I learned after researching it more. So we will have to heavily mulch these in the fall to help with survival. While planting the trees, we also added a scoop of compost around the base of the trees, which we did with our tractor, and then spreading it around with a shovel. This will help fertilize the tree, help retain moisture, and improve the soil quality over time. Secondly, we needed to extend our irrigation system to encompass the new trees. We use Drip Depot products to run our irrigation system. The water spigot is hooked up to a regular garden hose, which leads to a filter with a pressure regulator, and then to a 4-zone timer. In our case, we're only using 3 zones because the 4th zone is broken. The timer regulates when the trees get watered. This spring has been very dry, so we have been watering them every other day to get them started, but we can probably back off that soon, at least for now, until we're in the heat of the summer. The three zones has one line going to the far out west field and our windbreak line. One line goes to the first 3 rows of trees, and one line goes to the last 3 rows of trees. Each tree has a circle of drip line around it. This helps ensure that each tree gets watered sufficiently, but not overwatered. While we were adding trees this year, we noticed that the June bugs arrived early. And again, we're making quite a feast out of our trees. They tend to prefer our cherry trees, plum trees, and tupelo trees. But we also know that they will move on to the others as well once they've eaten through their favorites. Adult June bugs eat the entire leafy portion of the fruit tree leaves and leave the center stem, which can cause a lot of stress for a young tree, unsurprisingly. Their larvae, which live in the ground, eat the roots of trees and can cause damage there as well. So we brought out our tree nets to help keep the June bugs off of the trees. These work pretty well, but we do struggle with them somewhat because they can also act as a giant sail in the wind and could put a lot of strain on the young trees as the wind will pull them over. We tied the nets to the base of the trees just after the leaves and then tied the loose portions of the net to the tree posts to reduce the amount of wind drag on the tree. While we did use tree nets last year, we got them on a bit late to really prevent most of the damage. So this year it was nice to be a bit more prepared. Although we didn't quite have enough tree nuts, so I did order some more, but they won't be here for another week. In the meantime, we are using neem oil mixed with water and spraying them on the exposed trees. You only need about 2 tablespoons of neem oil per liter of water. This one's actually looking pretty good. Safety net there on the bottom.
Yeah.
This one doesn't look nearly as tore up by the June bugs.
I was thinking that too.
We mix up the neem oil and the water into a sprayer and then just use that to spray onto the trees. I have used neem oil in the past to help prevent squash beetles on our pumpkins and squash, and it seemed to work pretty well. For those, I would just spray it on the stems and leaves of the squash, and then when the squash beetles would come out, I'd pick them up and throw them in a bucket of soapy water. So with the trees, I was pretty interested to see if the neem oil had the same effect on the June bugs. We checked the orchard in the evening after spraying the trees with neem oil, and we are happy to report that we only found 1 June bug clinging to an exposed tree, which Andrew picked off and then threw it in a bucket of water. Last year, we could catch hundreds of June bugs this way, and then we would leave them in the water bucket overnight and then pour them out on the ground in the morning for our chickens to eat. So, although our chickens may be disappointed that they don't get to eat June bugs this year, I am happy that the June bugs are not eating our trees. In the future, the goal is to create a few chicken tractors to pull through the orchard for meat birds to help with the insects. They should be able to scratch up some of the grubs and just eat some of the bugs in general, and we hope that will keep some of this problem at bay. We do have around 100 chickens or so, but they don't typically venture into the orchard. We did also purchase some service berries to plant near the chickens. Service berries are native to the Midwest and are really underrated. They are a small tree or a bush, and they produce flowers in the spring and edible berries in the summer. Many birds and wildlife eat them, and they are very hardy plants. We planted a total of 5 near the chicken coops and used tomato cages covered in chicken wire to help keep the chickens away while the service berries established themselves. The chickens were already very interested in the service berries and were pecking the leaves off of them, so this was definitely a very necessary precaution. Now you may notice our small cream-colored rooster following us around. His name is Joey, and at some point we'll have to do a video on him. He is uber friendly, and as you can tell in this video, he is determined to supervise this process. Hopefully we lived up to Joey's expectations. Thanks for watching today. We hope you enjoyed today's adventure. See you next time. Cinder, what are you doing? Cinder cat. He's like, I'm just gonna sit in here.